Oh, infinito, itu tidak. Ini kalau semua. I think they've stopped almost all the products from now on. Okay, I think let's wait for Maik to join and hello everyone. We'll thank you for joining. We'll start at 7 p.m. in 2 minutes. Hi, good afternoon, Maik. You're not audible. Let me make you presenter.
Yes, hi. I was on mute.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, and you?
Let me make you presenter. Yeah, I think. Oh, good afternoon. Very good afternoon, Maik. So,
Yeah. Good evening for you, I think.
how is the COVID situation there in NL?
Could you repeat that? Sorry.
How is the COVID situation in NL?
Oh, it's getting better. So,
Oh, okay.
the masks can be removed next week, so we don't
Oh,
have to
nice.
wear the facial mask anymore. Yeah, and everything. Yeah, the vaccination is going good, so it's really progressing at this moment.
They allowed to travel Europe or other countries, UK and other places?
Yeah, there are
Still.
some countries. Basically, they are setting countries to green, yellow, and everything. So basically, the most of the countries are at this point yellow, I think, meaning that you can travel to them, but that you are warned about certain things that could happen. And I think there's only one country green where you don't have to think about anything or something. But I'm just sticking to the Netherlands for now.
Okay, nice.
How's it with you guys?
We are still under partial lockdown, but from 21st onwards, I think they are going to ease some restrictions. So
Okay.
yeah, let's see after that. Maybe after that, dining will be allowed. But yeah, no travel as of now.
Yeah, that's terrible. Yeah.
Okay, we'll start in next 5 minutes. I have a few announcements, so maybe you can try to share your screen and see that if everything is okay. Let me stop sharing my screen. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining today. If you are the first time, we are Microsoft Azure Singapore group, and it comes under Microsoft Technical Community. So we are a small part of Azure Singapore is a small part of Microsoft Technical Community in Singapore. There are a couple of other communities, .NET community and uh, .NET community and ML community and data community. So if you are interested, you can join our Facebook page, that MS Technical Communities SG. And we have also a meetup group. So you can join meetup.com.mssgug. All our upcoming sessions in any of the group will be posted here. And if you all the session recordings are available on our YouTube channel. That is, you can just type YTSGMVP, and you can see all our previous session recordings there. And if you are interested to present a session, or you would like to maybe organize a session, so you can contact any of the organizers or maybe in other committees, so we can help you to connect with them. And before going to, so these are the few sessions we have done in past. We have done in past we have done a DevOps series, so all the and API building series. So all the session recordings, previous session is available on our YouTube channel. So if you are interested, you can go and visit their Azure Singapore sessions completely. In today's session, we have two very interesting topics. Working with Azure Resource Manager specs and Azure DevOps, basically how you will manage or build your pipelines with the help of Azure DevOps and ARM templates. And with the help of next session is on how you'll build your infrastructure and CI/CD pipeline with in Terraform. So, and first session is going to Maik is going to present. Maik is he is a MVP and CTO of 3Infinity, and he have Maik having over 15 years of experience on various technology stack on means DevOps and cloud transformation. And he is a well-known speaker. He have also organizer for Dutch group in Dutch meetup group in Netherlands. And yeah. Or our next session is build effective infrastructure as a code using Terraform and CI/CD pipelines by Mohamed. He is also an MVP and principal DevOps consultant in UK. And this is our upcoming session. So we have already announced our upcoming session on July 8th. So if you are interested to know more about how you can go serverless with Azure functions and how you can build your secure your identity with zero trust. So there are two interesting sessions happening on July 8th. You can join same time, join there. And related to today's session, we have also done some few sessions on past using like infrastructure as a code with ARM templates and on by this, and also similar templates like ARM templates development and proven practices. So if you are interested in any one of this session, you can visit our YouTube channel, and recordings are available there. This is our YouTube channel, so please go and subscribe. You will find out all the session recordings, and it's a really good content available there. And we have also done some chart presentation previously. So yeah, as usual, it is available. So before I hand over to Maik, there are a few reminders. Please keep yourself on mute. And if you have a question, you can raise hand feature, or you can put in the chat box. And this session is being recorded. Please, if you like the session, please help to spread the word on social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. Yeah. So from here, I think now Maik, you can share your screen and yeah, and continue.
Yeah, I will share my screen. Let me. Yeah, it's ready. Where did I leave Teams? Yes. Just share my complete screen. That's the easiest. So hi everyone. Welcome to my session about, let me get this down here, on Azure Resource Manager Template specs and Azure DevOps. So basically what we'll be talking about today is some part of ARM, of course, but also a specific component in Azure called template specs. And to get some kind of interaction during an online meeting, I would kindly ask everyone in the meeting to raise his hand if he already knows what some sort template specs are. I don't see any hands coming through. So I think most of you guys are all new to template specs, so that will be very interesting. So let's just get started, and I will show you some in-depth things about template specs and how to work with them. I will also show you how you can even publish them via Azure DevOps. As I was working on the demonstration this week, I also integrated some GitHub Actions part, so that would be nice too as well. And to really top it off, I will also throw in some Bicep language for you to really make a complete session about how you can deal with ARM, of course, and also the template specs. But first, let me introduce myself a little bit further. Like there was already mentioned, my name is Maik van der Graag. I'm a CTO of 350. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer, so I do a lot of training sessions as well. Since June 1st, I was awarded the MVP award, so I'm also Microsoft MVP, and I'm the founder of the Dutch Cloud Meetup, where we basically held sort-like sessions within the Netherlands, or outside of that as well, of course, because everyone can sign in for online sessions, but we hope to move to in-person sessions after the summer, because everything is going okay with the COVID situation in the Netherlands. So I'm really hoping to get to those in-person sessions as well. Basically, that's me. I also have a personal life, but basically everything around the technical is picking up my personal time as well. So basically, what is a template spec? So to deep dive more into what is a template spec, I will just show you and tell you basically what it is and how it works. Basically, a template spec is nothing more or nothing less than just a resource type within Azure. So basically what you are building is a resource type in Azure that allows you to store an ARM template. I think most of you guys, as I already saw in the previous sessions as well, that most of you guys already know what ARM templates are and for what you can use them. And basically an Azure template spec is a resource type in Azure to share and store your ARM templates. As you also may know, all resources in Azure use the role-based access control module. So this also complies to template specs, meaning that you have a new way of sharing your ARM templates within your organization, and really making you enable to have some more guidance about that as well. So what you can imagine, and I will show you later on in the demo, is that you have a resource within Azure that contains your ARM template, and people can use that template spec to deploy resources all over the place where they have access. So you should apply access, of course, to the template specs, and then they can use the template specs to deploy the resources. So basically, if we then look at how it works, basically at start, you have an ARM template or you have link templates, basically how you build up your ARM templates. That can be in any kind of situation. You publish those templates to Azure via, in this example, a PowerShell comment stating that you have a new -AC template spec. You give that a name, you give it a version, resource group, because it's a resource in Azure. So you also need to supply a resource, and of course a location as well, and also attach a template file to it. With that all, you create a template spec, as you can see in the icon, and next to that, you can use that template spec to deploy resources. So you can deploy resources via PowerShell, like this example, where you first get the specific template spec and really specific that version that you want to deploy. And then you just do a new AC resource group deployment like you have done always with ARM as well. Same actions can be done via the portal or via the CLI. That really doesn't matter how you do it. the most important thing that you should remember when you are talking about template specs is that it's just ARM. Nothing more, nothing less. And Azure template specs is just an encapsulation over your ARM templates and giving you an easy way to share things you are creating. So it makes your life a lot easier if you have a lot of ARM templates within your organization to share that within your organization. So why would you then start using ARM template specs? So like I already mentioned, it's an easy way for sharing. And how is that made easy for you? Is that it's basically completely managed via Airbag. So basically every access rights, roles, and everything you already have in place within your Azure platform also applies to template specs. So as it's just a resource, it's just handled in the same way. Next thing, and that's also important, I will show you all that also later in the demonstration, is that when you are a fan of link templates, you have to have a public location where you share your ARM templates for the ARM agent to use that link template. With template specs, that's no longer required. So basically you can incorporate your template specs in a module kind of way within your template, but you can also use local linked templates. And let me, when you will see it in the demonstration, it will be more clear for you. Is that you a local kind of way of linked templates, making sure that you still can use the template and still work in a module way of working, but you do not require that public location anymore or a SaaS token location where you have those templates saved so that you can link them to one. So some facts about it. When working with template specs and when you want to share them within your organization, the user that wants to use that template spec only needs read permission on the template spec itself. So in a situation where you have deployed template spec to a specific resource group, a person that wants to use that template spec should only have read permissions on that group or on that specific template. He's then able to deploy that same template spec to a subscription where he has, for example, contributor rights or owner rights, making it very easy for him to just take a template spec and deploy it on the location where they want to have it. Again, generic role-based access control is used when deploying template specs, meaning that with the reader rights, he only needs contributor rights on some other place to deploy those specs. And basically by using template specs, you have an additional set of guidance within your organization to share templates, but also to make sure that people are using ARM templates in the way they are supposed to do, but also having some regulations in place within your templates. So if you, for example, also always want to have a storage account should have HTTPS enabled only, then you could, for example, create a template spec, configure that in ARM completely so that the storage account always have HTTPS, and let other people that want to deploy a storage account make use of your templates, making sure that every guidance is already in place in that template and that they don't have to recreate those templates as well. So before we take an even deeper dive into how we can work with them, I will just do a small demonstration. Let me get Visual Studio Code open. So I have Visual Studio Code open here. And let me just get through some folders. So basically I have a set of folders already open here for the demonstration, and I will just move to some simple folders at this point, and then basically do a deeper dive into how we can work with them as well. So I have a simple template spec that contains a web application. So it's just an Azure app service. As you can see here, if we look at the resources, so we have a Microsoft Web.site and we have a Microsoft Web.server farms. So basically deploying this will give me an Azure app service within the Azure platform. So this is not anything different than just the default ARM template. Basically, the magic comes in when you perform scripts to create those template specs. So as you can see here on the 0.1 version, we have a specific comment called new AZ template spec. And then we supply it with all the information required to deploy that. And basically, the magic comes in here is where we just reference an existing ARM template. So this is basically the ARM template I just showed you. Nothing more, nothing less than ARM. One good thing to notice is that the version number at this comment is still of a type string. So it's not a really specified version like 1.0. Now you can basically type in everything you want. You can type in test 1, test 2, or you can basically stick yourself to a semantic versioning. That's basically what I normally do within template specs when I also use and incorporate Azure DevOps. So we will deep dive further into that later on. So let me first just create my basic resource groups in the Azure platform. As you can see here, where I have my Azure platform open as well. If I just go to the resource group and just filter on the subscription we are going to use today. And I have 4. That's nice. 4 resource groups here. They should be in here as well. Always during demonstration, the Azure portal is caching everything. So you can see here I just created 2 resource groups, and basically these resource groups are totally empty. One of these resource group, and that's basically this one, I will use to deploy my template specs to, and the other one is for where I will be deploying the resources from the template specs. So let us just create our first template spec by using this command. So this basically will create an template spec called AZ temp spec minus web app. So as you can see here, it should be deployed version 1.1. If we go to the resource group, refresh, and then it will take a few moments to appear as well. Just to completely refresh. Nice. Always when I building the demonstration, everything works immediately, but doing the demonstration always make sure that nothing is shown up. There it is. So you can see here now we have a regular resource called AZ temp spec minus web app. That's of a type template spec and in the location West Europe. If we click on it, you will see more information about the template spec we just created. So what you can see here is that I have a latest version, 1.1, and I have some other information about the template. So I have a main template file, and you could, for example, have some artifacts. We will deep dive later on the artifacts part as well. If I click on the main template part, I will just see the ARM template. I just also shown you the in Visual Studio Code. So it's exactly the same. Nothing has changed here, and you can just use this to deploy your resources. You can even do a more deep dive into this as well. So I can see here that I have a version 1.1. So for example, if I would have a version 1.2, let me just update the version number in my session and then also do a new deploy to the Azure portal. You can see here that I have a version 1.2 and it should be popping up here as well. So you now have 2 different versions where you also are building basically a version management system around your ARM templates directly into Azure. So you are also able to deploy other versions to your Azure portal. So basically, if someone would like to use version 1.1, he can use that reference 1.1 to deploy. But he could also, for example, use the 1.2 version. Another good thing to notice in this portal is that you also have the option directly to deploy it. So I have access to this template spec, so I can also click on the deploy part, and that will basically just give you the regular interface you are known to as well within the Azure portal. it gives you the deployment mechanism. What you can see here as well is it is just a basic ARM deployment where you can specify the subscription where you want to deploy to. You can specify the deployment group, the resource group, and then you also have, and basically here it's called the instance details. Here you have the parameters that you specify in a template. So if you look at the template in Visual Studio Code, we have specified a couple of parameters, and they are basically all shown at this place as well. So you have the web app name, you have the location, the SKU, and the Linux FX version. Also already filled in with all the default parameters. So what you can see here is normally I just generate a name for the web app that's a unique string. And then you also have a location where I just use the current location of my resource group. So via this way, I can just click next and deploy those resources as well. The other way around to deploy your resources is just basically just using your PowerShell script version where you're already in. And that's basically done in 2 steps. So to be able to deploy your resources via the PowerShell commands or via the CLI, that works exactly the same. You first have to get a reference to your template spec. In this example, you need to get a specific version of your template spec. So you always have to supply the version number as well. So if you just perform this command, we will have a template spec. So if we look up the ID in the PowerShell, you can see that it's just basically a resource reference that it creates. So it's now pointing to my version 1.2. And by using this command, I can just deploy it to Azure, to my resource group deploy, and by supplying the template spec. So it more or less works the same as how you would deploy an ARM template regularly, but now you're just deploying something that has been guided by, for example, your organization, that you can deploy to your organizations and to your Azure portal. So basically this is deploying. So if you should look up the Azure part, and just go back to the resource group section. Filters. As you can see here now, resources are popping up here. We can see that we had one deployment and that succeeded. And that's just basically the ARM template being deployed on this location. So the web app itself should pop up in a few moments as well. But there it is. So that's basically works the same. So now let us just go a little bit deeper and look at my second demonstration. And that's basically how I just referred to using linked templates. So as you may have known, in ARM templates, if you want to use the linked templates, you need to supply a public URL or a URL with a SES token to use a specific other template and incorporate that into your template and into your deployment. With Azure template specs, you basically have 2 different options of using this. And it's not a complete different way of working, but just a little bit different. So as you can see in the 02 folder here, I have a folder called resources, and I have a ARM template called 02 linked template spec. If I open up the 02 template spec, you can see here that I have a regular parameter section where I can still supply parameters for my deployment. I have a variable that's just getting an app service plan name, and I have a set of resources. So in this set of resources, I think I now have 2 resources. And if we look at just one resource, we just do a nested deployment way of working. So where we just specify, okay, I have a Microsoft.resource.deployment section. We call it, in this example, create web app. The mode is incremental, and I have a template link. And I use the relative path property to specify that I have a relative path to a different ARM template. So that's basically my template link. And basically this one is linked to resources/webapp.json. So if you look at the resource folder, You can see here that I have a web app.json. This is basically an ARM template, just like the 0.1 version, where I have an app servers and a web application that we use to deploy. The second resource is more or less the same. It also uses the nested deployment section. It's only pointing to another resource file. So in this way of working, you are really creating specific modules for specific resources and incorporating them into one main template. So basically the 0.2 minus linked template spec is my main template that just retrieves other templates and makes a complete template for that. So if we create a new template spec for the 0.2 version, this comment, we will get a new AC temp spec link template. Then look it up in the template specs folder we already have. Of course, take up to a couple of seconds again. If it will take too long, we will just go on with the other thing. So there it is. So we have a new template spec in here as well, and there's a little bit of a difference in this template. So as you can see here at the 0.1 demonstration, we had the main template, but we now also have the artifact section. So we have a relative artifact section where we also have the other two templates. So basically everything is now incorporated into one template spec, and it's using the relative parts, and we can still see what's in there as well. We can see the artifacts, and we can also see the main template that basically combines everything in one. And we can also do the deploy part, of course, where it will also retrieve the specified parameters. So you can see here in this template spec, we are using a few other kind of templates and other kind of parameters as well. So basically we also have to supply an account name in this example. So this is basically works the same as the other one, but then a little bit different as it's now also using the linked template section. The other option you have for linking specific templates or working in another different module kind of way within ARM and template specs is by using template specs as a module. So as you could have seen now, we are using template specs and using linked templates in an artifact kind of way. What you could also do if, for example, if one of your customers or one of the people you shared your template spec with also still wants to use an ARM kind of deployment. So basically what you see in the DevOps kind of way of working, you always want to deploy automated, and we also want to deploy declaratively our resources. So you, for example, don't want to use PowerShell to do it, you want to use ARM to do it. So that's also an option when using template specs. So if we look at the 0.5 module.json file, that's basically an ARM template. So it's not it will not be a template spec. It could be a template spec as well, of course. But it's just a simple ARM template where we, in this example, specify a parameter that's called spec RG, meaning that I want to have my template spec resource group, and I have a nested deployment. A nested deployment called module in this way, also an incremental mode, and I have a template link specified here. Basically, this template link with the property ID will retrieve a specific template spec for me from the specified resource group, but also the specified version. So in this example, this ARM template, if I deploy this ARM template, it will deploy my template spec in an RM kind of way. So it will retrieve that ID and will use that for deployment. So if we look at the deployment mechanism, how we would then deploy it, it's basically this line of code where it just retrieves the resource group. It retrieves the module and then deploys it. So I'm now using it with the confirm statement. So if I'm not mistaken, we already deployed the 0.1 version. So there should be no difference in it because we have deployed the 0.1 version already via PowerShell. And this ARM template is just using that to deploy. So what you can see here as well, if we just move it up a little bit, it just creates the properties. Those are just default way of working. It already sees that it's modifying. So it's basically making no change in this example as well, as it's already deployed via the template spec. So if we want, we could also specify a different one here. So if we, for example, take the other one, let me just get the correct name. This example, we don't have a 0.1 version. We only have the 0.1.0, 1.2 version. Move back to the scripts. Yep. Yep. And run this command again. Oh, let me just say that it doesn't have to do anything. And let's just run the command again. With the confirm statement is now just checking what if I deploy this section, and what should happen in this example. Ooh. Yeah. Okay, let's go. What you can see here now is that I'm now trying to deploy my 0.2 link template spec version as specified in this module. So I'm picking up the link template version, and basically the link template version still requires an additional parameter called account name as specified, and it does not have a default value in this example. So it still needs to be supplied by the script as well. So you can also see is that not only are we using the template specs at this moment, but we are still required to fill in the correct parameters. You still need to supply everything that you want in your templates to get the deployment running like it should. Looking at the time, let's continue to a more advanced scenario. Let me just move back to the slides as well. Let me check. Let me swap the brands. So looking at the facts again, we have gone through basically what template specs are, how you can use them to have more guidance within your organization about how you want to deploy your resources. So let's take it a step further and look at the recent things that happened basically in the deployment phase where they have delivered a language called so-called Bicep. I do not know how many people of you already know what Bicep is in this group. So let me just shortly go over what Bicep is and how it works. Basically, Bicep is a domain-specific language, and that's basically the same as what HTML is called, also a domain-specific language, and it's a transparent abstraction over ARM. So nothing more, nothing less. It's basically a generation tool for ARM, but it's a simplified generation tool for ARM. So basically you write your Bicep files where you specify what you want to deploy, what kind of properties it should have, and then you use a command tool called Bicep build, and that will generate your Bicep ARM files. Bicep, for example, could also be used to decompile, how someone would call it, is basically generating your Bicep files from your ARM. But if you haven't looked into Bicep yet, you really should do it, as it's a real simplified version of ARM. It makes your life a lot easier to create really excessive large files that you normally would do with ARM to just a simple line, a few lines of code, and basically 10 seconds for you to create as well. Since a couple of months, it also has the one-to-one capability with ARM, and it also has Microsoft production support. So it was released, if I'm not mistaken, during Ignite this year, where they said, okay, we have one-to-one compatibility with ARM, and I think they are now on the 0.4 version at the moment. And with the 0.3 version, they also delivered Microsoft production support. So if you have problems with your Bicep files, you can also contact the Microsoft support. So, and as you can see here in this image, it's when you have an Azure.bicep file, you do a bicep.build bicep, and that will generate your ARM, and then you can use the regular AZ deployment commands to deploy your resources. So let's look how it then works with, for example, template specs. So as you may know already, and what I already told during this session is that template specs are just ARM. So if we want to incorporate Bicep in this as well, we just need to create a Bicep file, generate the ARM from it, and then use that ARM template to generate or create our new template spec. So as you can see here in this image, we have a Bicep file. We generate the ARM with Bicep build. We then have the ARM template, and basically we publish that to Azure into a template spec. And then we have the template spec, and we can use that template spec to deploy our resources. So let me go to the demo for that as well. So as you can see here, we still have two additional folders. So we have a 0.3 folder and a 0.4. And this is basically the most easy version to begin with, the 0.3. This is a Bicep file where you can see that we also have an app service plan. We have an app service site itself. We have the config section for my web application where we do some specific configurations. We also have an app settings section for setting an instrumentation key. Some extensions as well for application insights, and we have an application insights component. So basically this script that you see here, that this Bicep file could be normally a JSON file as well, but it's now more simplified with just the required properties for a resource. And also you can very easily point to other kind of resources. So as you can see here is I just use an app insights.properties.instrumentation key to retrieve the instrumentation key of my application insights component I will be deploying in the same file. Bicep generates the dependencies between your resources for you within ARM. So if you let me just remove this one to show you how it's generated. Let me just get the script, and we are at 0.3. So we have the Bicep build command that we can execute. If we execute that script, you see some warnings. That's just regarding the APIs and schema configurations, but you also see the JSON file appearing again. So it has generated the JSON file, and that's basically the ARM JSON file where you have the specified properties, you have the resources available. So you can see here that I have a web server, I have a site, I have the configuration again, and everything else is already in this template. So it's ready for us to deploy to the Azure platform. You also see some metadata from the generator, so it knows when a template has changed or not. So with this Bicep, we can move to the second step and basically deploying the template spec to our Azure environment. And then we will see an additional version popping into our resource group. Of course, this will take up a matter of seconds as well. Let me just move on to the next demo, and then we will see them appearing into Azure itself. So we also have a 0.4, and that's basically a different kind of way of using modules. So you saw me using the link template section where I have a subfolder called resources with my specified JSON files. Now we will move to basically the Bicep way of using modules. As you could see with the 03 demonstration in the Bicep file, we use the keyword resource to deploy and specify a specific resource. In Bicep, you also have a keyword called module, and that's basically a file that we would like to reference. So what you can see here is I have a module storage, and it's pointing to a specific file, and it's pointing to a specific local file, meaning that if I look into the .modules folder, I should have a 001 storage account Bicep file. So I have an additional Bicep file where I specify the resource. So this is basically how you could reuse Bicep templates. And I'm pointing this main Bicep file to that module where I just specify what I want. So basically I specify the required properties of that Bicep file. And I then do, for example, also do an output of the deployment. Basically what Bicep does when you generate the ARM template for this file, it just creates a nested deployment with the specific ARM type. So if we just generate a Bicep for it, let's press F8, we see the 04 folder appearing. And you can see here is that we have that location, for example, also, and we have a resource. It's not a resource that you would expect like storage. No, it's like I just explained, a Microsoft.resources.deployments resource that contains basically the ARM template for the storage account. So this is just a different kind of working with link templates, but then in a Bicep kind of way, where you just use the module section, and basically everything else regarding template specs is the same as everything else. You can just create a new template spec by pointing to the ARM file again and deploying that to your Azure environment, meaning that we should now have, in a bit, should have 4 template specs. And what you can see here is that the template spec Bicep web app now also contains a main template that we can use to deploy resources. So for example, if we just deploy this one, you will see that we have a lot of more parameters available now. So let me just use the app service name. Let me just AZ Surg 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Do the same for the website. If you create, if I'm not mistaken, it should just pick that up. So it's now just deploying my template spec to a specified resource group. I don't even know which resource group I specified because I went too fast through it. And it's deploying to this resource group, I see. And I also see that I have the other template spec available, the Bicep module storage. And what you can also see, and where's the difference with the ARM template version, where we have the relative paths, we do not have the relative paths, as because of Bicep, it just incorporates the module within my template. So it really reads out the module, places that module within a nested deployment, and specifies that in the template. So this is just a different kind of way of working, where you have the nested deployment available for you. Okay, to do a deeper dive, we have Azure DevOps, of course. So how do you work with all these kind of things within Azure DevOps? So for Azure DevOps, we have a project called Azure Template Specs. And at this point, the only thing I'm using within this project is the pipeline section, because I've built pipelines to be able to deploy my resources within the resource group. For the repository, I'm just using GitHub. So I have a public GitHub repository available. So if you, after the session, would like to work with some template spec, see how it works, use the script files, you can just move to this repository, just look for my name in GitHub and you will find it right away. So you can see here is that we have the template specs available, but I also have a folder called .pipeline, where I have 4 specified YAML pipelines that deploy our resources. And basically all these pipelines are built up in the same way. So let me just use the 0.2 version. What you can see here, I have some specified variables, and basically these variables are required for doing the deployment. So you can see here is that I'm pointing to a file path just for deploying that one template. I have the same thing, but then with an extension for the file name that we want to pick up. I have a specified variable for the template spec name, and I have a variable for the resource group name that we want to use to deploy this template spec to. I just have the regular trigger parts in there as well. And in this example, we're just using the Windows 2019 hosted agents by Microsoft, really making it easy for you to manage everything and work with the template specs. So what we do here is that I have a few tasks in here. And it's very simple. So I have a task in here called check resource group. And basically the only thing this thing does, it gets the resource group that we specified in the variables. If it already exists, it does nothing. If it does not exist, it just creates it. So you can see here is that we do a check, and if it's not found, we just create the resource group. Otherwise, we just print out something. Okay, the resource group already exists, and we have an additional PowerShell task, and that PowerShell task just deploys the template spec. So we have specified an inline PowerShell comment, exactly the same comment that you saw within Visual Studio Code, basically doing the new AZ template spec with the name, with a version, with the resource group location, and the template file. Then comes something that I find very handy. That's basically an Azure DevOps extension I created myself, and that's basically a semantic versioning number that just increases on every build I do. So I specify a version number myself by default in Azure DevOps, and for every one I do of this pipeline, it just increases the version number. And you, for example, can when the patch version reaches 9, I can update the minor version automatically, really giving me a different version every time I deploy my template spec to Azure. So let me just run the 0.2 version, and to be completely sure that it deploys the correct way, and so that I can show you that it works as well, I will just remove this one, as this is the one we will be deploying. Yeah, and I deployed all the other resources as well. So let's move to the pipeline. So you saw the YAML pipeline. So if we look at the pipeline section, you will see the different templates here. So I haven't renamed this one yet. And I have the 0.2 link template spec. What you can see here as well, I've run the 0.0.1 version already when building the demonstration. So if I run the pipeline at this moment, it should be running the 0.0.2 version. Let me see if it still works. Yeah, so you can see here that I'm now running the 0.0.2 version, and it's kicking off my job on the Microsoft hosted agents. Trying to load. So this will be acquiring a hosted agent from Microsoft, and then will allow me to build further. So we just have to wait a few seconds. So let's move on to the other part I also created for this demonstration to give you some more insights on how to do this on different platforms. I also created a GitHub action. And if you just look at the GitHub action file, and I've done this with Bicep, for example. So basically what this does, what I just showed you on the 0.4 version demonstration, it gets the Bicep, it generates the ARM from the Bicep file, and then deploys the template spec to the Azure platform. So GitHub Actions more likely work the same as Azure DevOps pipelines. So you can see here is that we run on the Ubuntu version, but as we are running Bicep on a hosted agent, the difference in the process is a little bit different, because we now don't do only the ARM template and deploy that as a template spec. Now we are also using Bicep. Bicep isn't available at this moment as a default option, so we also need to install the Bicep components. So basically what I do here is I do it in 2 steps. So I have a build step and a deploy step. This is basically the build step. And in the build step, we just do an installation of the Bicep tooling. When Bicep is installed, I run a bicep.build command to generate our ARM template. And if that's done, I archive all my JSON files so that I have an archive of all my templates. That would give you an option later on to go back to a specific version, but then you have your files archived. Then in the deploy step, I basically do the same as within the pipeline you just saw. I do a directory listing that was just for testing things out. I log into Azure. So I log into the Azure, and I now use the CLI command to create the Azure template spec. So you can see that there's a little bit of difference on how you use the CLI over PowerShell. This is just an ACTS create, and you supply the same parameters for the template spec, and you just specify the JSON file. So if we run this one, and let me just remove the 0.4, let me just, this is the actual version, let me delete this one. So this is removed as well. Let me just run this workflow. Is it triggered? Yeah, it's triggered. So then let us just move back for Azure DevOps. So you can see that Azure DevOps has done his work. It checked the resource group, and it's mentioning that the resource group already exists. Then it just deployed the template spec again. It has updated the version number on my build pipeline. So if I would run this another time, it will be a 0.0.3 version, and then just did the post checkout job. So moving back to the resource group we have for our template specs, I should have, again, the link template with exactly the same version as you saw before, but now with a version of 0.02. Running this pipeline again will give us a 0.03 version later on in Azure as well. If you look at the GitHub Actions, you can see that both stages have succeeded. So we have the build stage that installed Bicep and created the JSON file, and then we have the deploy step where we did an Azure login with an Azure CLI action to create the template spec as well. So if we move to the group, we should also have the 4th one already available. And you can see that we have this one is the minus.github version, so that I know which one I'm looking at. And you can see that we have a version 1.0 here. It's because I do not have the semantic version number incorporated here. And I was just deploying as a 1.0 version to the Azure platform. Moving back to this, I think Azure DevOps should be almost complete. It's still waiting. Oh, it's still running.
Hello.
It's updating the version.
Yeah, you told me that
You can now see that we have a 0.03 version of the template with the other versions in here as well, so that you can look back at what versions you already had. So to get back at my demonstration, we still have some time for Q&A if you guys want. So if you want to get in contact, you can do that via LinkedIn. You can do that via Twitter or via email as well. I have also specified my GitHub repository in this slide. Oh, let me just switch it. I've also specified my GitHub repository so that you can see the code in GitHub as well with the specified repository. And if you have any question, you can always try to email me as well.
Thank you so much. Maik, there are a few questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah, there is one question from Ronald. He's asking, template specs looks like a lot. How container registry is to? Is there a way to link a resource group to a template spec, such as the latest version is deployed always, or deployment is a separate manual step?
No, it's still a manual step. So there's no linking at this moment. Not sure if there will be any in the future, but at this moment it's still a manual step to just deploy the template specs to a specific location.
And there is one more question by Jin. There is a way of generating variable within the pipeline to use with subsequent tasks and subsequent stages.
I do not totally get that question. Sorry.
Jin, you can unmute yourself and can ask directly if you.
Hi, yeah. So, firstly, great presentation. But we have a pipeline where we're trying to create in the first task, it will create a variable which will be a host name generated from a random API. So it will go out to an API and call the host name. We then have to use that host name in the subsequent tasks and the stages. Is there a way of setting it so the output is the variable that we can then use?
In your template spec, you mean, for example?
Yeah. If you want to use in a template spec further down the line.
Yeah, so if I'm getting your question correctly, so you retrieve the you retrieve the host name that you want to use, and you later on want to reuse that host name into a deployment of a template spec. Yeah, basically you can do that as well. So for example, what you see here is that, let me just go back to Azure DevOps. We go. So if you, for example, have a deployment of a template spec here, so you can do exactly the same within Azure DevOps, but you can also supply the parameters as well. So for example, if I need to supply an account name, I can just supply the variable from Azure DevOps. So if that's your host name, you can just supply your host name, and basically Azure DevOps will replace that with your host name.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So simple. All right, thanks.
Hey everyone, if you have any questions, so you can unmute and can ask directly to Maik, or otherwise, I think next speaker is also there. Yeah. Any template for mobile automation deployment?
Mobile automation deployment. And what do they mean with mobile automation deployment?
Okay, so is there anything like from the mobile automation side which can be done via this thing?
And what do you mean with the mobile automation side?
Like if I want to create a CI/CD pipeline for the mobile automation, is there any template or something like that which we can achieve?
Oh, you mean a real template in Azure DevOps itself?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. Basically, the only thing you could reuse is basically the existing task that you already have in Azure DevOps and just dragging them into the pipeline in edit mode.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for asking the questions, and thanks, Mac. Really nice session, and we have thank you for. Okay, we have our next speaker. Hi, Mohammed, you are there?
Hi, Mohammed. Yes, I'm there.
Okay, let me. Hey, how are you?
Yes, good. Hello, Mike. Nice session. Thank you.
Hi, Mohamed. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just quickly introduce you. Hello, everyone. So we have our next speaker lineup. Our next. So he is going to present on building pipelines, build effective infrastructure as a code for using Terraform and CI/CD pipelines. And Mohammad is a principal DevOps consultant. He's a Microsoft MVP, and he have also 18 of years experience on different technology stack. And he is a well-known speaker on his YouTube. There are a lot of you can see a lot of good sessions, and I really love his sessions. Okay, and so if he have written a lot of books, and he have participated in many tech conferences. So if you are interested in DevOps, and I think this is the right guy also, you can see his things. Okay, so Mohammed, maybe you can just share your screen and can continue.
Sure. Thank you, Mohammed, for this introduction. Okay. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, that's great. Yes, yes, the same as you explained. So I have been in the industry for more than 18 years. I work as a principal cloud DevOps consultant in the UK. And during my journey, I helped more than 50 enterprise customers, some of them from the Fortune 500. So yes, today we are going to talk about building effective infrastructure as code using Terraform. And so I really like the idea to start from the beginning and from the ground up. So I will start by, again, to make sure that we are on the same page. So first we will start by introducing the infrastructure as code to make sure that, everyone is understanding the principles, and then start talking about the challenges with traditional infrastructure. After that, we're talking about the vicious circle of manual process, what are leading to, like having these technology or these practices. And then understanding infrastructure as code concepts, and talking about infrastructure as code workflow, and then introducing or introduction to infrastructure as code with Terraform. And then we will have a first demo, which will just give you, again, because I really like the idea to start from the beginning, how to install and configure Terraform on your machine. And then we will get some advantages of infrastructure as code. And then the second demo, which will be a complete end-to-end demo with CI/CD pipeline using Terraform to provision environment and also deploy a web application, a sample web application to the environment. Okay, so get starting about what is infrastructure as code. So in order to start that, how this started, so let's talk first about the challenges with traditional infrastructure. So, when we're talking about traditional infrastructure or having an infrastructure, we usually have some environments. Could be maybe a virtual server, it could be some components, or, and then we start making manual change for this, environment. Year after year, you make changes. And now, we would like to replicate the environment for many reasons. It could be for scalability reason. It could be for disaster recovery. It could be, for maybe testing environment. There is many scenarios you would like to replicate the environment. And I have seen many scenarios, that this is like, you're going for a manual process, and again, for many reasons. But the problem here that it's really I will say, I don't want to say impossible, but I will say it's really difficult to replicate the environment, because again, you will have the manual process and you will open the document, try to follow all the steps in the documents, but again, it's still at the end, it's not working. But here, and again, at the end, it requires downtime. If you would like, for example, if talking about scale up, or you will end up with downtime at the end. And this brings us to the vicious circle of manual process. So if we look at the manual process, you start by writing the documents, what are the steps for producing this environment? Like this is the configuration I created, and once you update, then you start to document this update. But the problem that it takes long time, so it usually end up with error. So what usually happens that you start to add more verification steps, because you want to make sure that this error will not happen again. So once you complete and fix that, you start adding more verification, which end up with more manual process, with more documentation taking, and this has become like, you started with a small documentation and then start increasing and then start, and again, it's become like a nightmare, and it end up like your server is, or your environment, you treat them as a bits, like no one can touch them, like this is why if you look at the operation team, or the people that responsible for operate the application, or the product in production, they really like have a very defensive attitude for, no, you are not going, and it takes like long time to change request to deploy new deployment, because again, we don't, it's really difficult to reproduce this environment, and so they treat the environment as bits. And we are trying to say, don't be in the position to treat your environment as bits, but instead you have to treat them as a cattle. So once it's cattle, it means that you can replace them. You don't bring them inside your home. You treat them because it's replaceable and easy replaceable. So infrastructure and code. So the main idea of infrastructure as code is, instead of start using the UI to change any configuration, just thinking of, we are not going to do that. So instead, we are going to use code to make sure that we provision the environment, changing any configuration using code first. So, and before that, let's make sure to understand the difference between declarative and imperative infrastructure as code. So with imperative, it means, or declarative. So imperative is how, not what, but declarative is what, not how. So this must has a workflow, but when we're talking about declarative, it's just logic, no workflow. Procedure here for the imperative, so it follows the same as, for example, the programming. If you write this line before this line will be executed first. But here, this is a functional. It's not, it's not a workflow. Reaches the final state, but by executing order steps, and you will reach the final steps by the end of the steps. But here you reach the content with no order, and this gives you more flexibility about, describe what you need. You don't need to, to be conscious about the order of the, and this is the importance of the declarative. So infrastructure as code workflow. So it starts with, you have everything under source control. And this is usually, you can see, in the market now, we're talking about GitOps, so everything under source control, you should treat everything in your source control. And then you just get latest from the source control. And then you start, again, maybe changing the infrastructure, so maybe writing some, provision environment, or maybe changing or configuration, and then doing this change. Once you complete it, you bring back to the source control. And again, this is, for me, is very important. You can run that from your machine, but I prefer usually, if we're working as a team, if you're working in enterprise, I prefer all the time to run the provision or the update from the source control, so I can trust that this is coming from the source control, not from your machine. So this is very important. And once we committed that to the source control, we can run an automation, a build automation that just get the latest to start creating or provision a new environment or update an environment. In this way, we have what we call immutable environment. We don't change our environment, using any configuration by any way. This is just, the only way to change the configuration is using this, path. And in this case, I usually doing the same, changing the code, committed the change, and from the source control, either. This is why, I can pretty sure that every time I reproducing the environment, I will have the same environment, because I can trust that this environment created and updated from this version. So if I produce another one, it will be the same. Yes, so advantages of infrastructure as code, easily repeatable. So as you can see, it's like once you have it, then it's very easy to repeat the process, and easily readable. Once you open the file, you can understand, for example, what are the components of your infrastructure, and operational with certainty, because in Terraform, we have a Terraform plan, which give you something like a dry run that can give you what will be expected to have when you run, like your Terraform, because you don't want, for example, to run that and you figure out at the end this is not the right, the state that you want. And standardized environment builds, because you have now a repeatable model, then you can standardize your environment with a big trust. And of course, quickly provision development environment or disaster recovery, or any kind of provision new environments become more reliable and more quicker than before. So talking about advantages of Terraform, we're talking about platform agnostic. Using Terraform, you can target multiple cloud providers if we're talking about multi-cloud, and also not only for cloud, but also Terraform can work well with other components or infrastructure or systems. It's not only for cloud, but there is, for example, many on-premises solutions that still you can represent that with Terraform, which gives, this is very strong, because one language you can use that and with other or many platform, and give you, like, instead of learning or using different skills with other configuration tool. State management, this is really very strong of Terraform, because this helping you to understand the current state of your actual environment. So this is really very powerful. And operator confidence, because again, you can trust the infrastructure as code, and you have a good process, then you can usually operate with a confidence. Okay, let's look at the demo for install and build. I usually prefer to. So as you can see, I will start. This is my Azure subscription, and as you can see, it's very easily to install that. Just search for install Terraform, and just here for download. And as you can see, this will give you an example for which platform you are looking for. In this demo, I recorded because I would like to speed up. So as you can see, I just choose here the configuration I want, because this machine was Windows 64. So as you can see, just extracted that. It's just an exe. So what I just need is just to use this exe. So I will put that in any place inside my directory, and just open the environment variables. So edit the environment variables, and in the path, I will just add the path here. As you can see, it is here. The main idea, once I add it in the global environment variables, I can use Terraform from anywhere. I don't have to navigate to where Terraform is. So this make much easier. So once I have that, I can just type Terraform from anywhere. As you can see, I have it now. And as you can see here, I use, git bash. You can use any command line. Maybe if you are in the Windows, you can use the CMD, the normal CMD. You can use git bash, the same. So now, as you can see, this is work. And also, working with Azure, you need to make sure that you have Azure CLI, because we are going to communicate with the Azure subscription. So here, just clear. And once you have Azure CLI installed, yes, you just verify that it is installed by using AZ. So it's installed. So now you're just using Azure CLI to log in to your Azure subscription. So it will just prompt me to log in, and I already logged in, so I don't need to do that. It's just to give you the idea. Once I logged in, just clear here the screen. Then here I just prepare the script. So here, this is just small configuration. I will explain it. So now here I will navigate to my Azure subscription. So as you can see here, this is the current resource group I have. So I will just get back here. So I will create a directory to put my Terraform configuration, make directory. Let's call it Terraform session. So this will create the directory, as you can see. And I will put here my Terraform configuration file. So, echo, this is wrong. Sorry, I need to navigate to the Terraform first, session directory first. Okay, and then here I will start, just create main Terraform file. So as you can see, this is just an empty file. I will just open that with any editor. And here I will paste the small code. So here, as you can see, this is just to have the provider. Let me run that. So here I will just say Terraform initialized. So Terraform initialized, it is the same idea. When you look at git initialize, for example, it just initialize this directory where you are now to initialize that with a Terraform. So what usually happen, I will explain to you exactly. So as you can see, this folder is created, and also there is a file called Terraform look. So as you can see, this is the providers. So, and this is Azure ARM. So as you can see, this is the plugins. So what usually happens when you run or click, when you initialize with Terraform, what Terraform is just look at the current directory, scan all the Terraform configuration file, and start look at what are the current providers that you are using. So, and because I'm using Azure, then the Terraform engine understand that I'm using Azure, so it just downloads the plugins, which is just imagine, just as you can see, it's an exe, which is plugin that Terraform can use, and this will just access the API of Azure. So all the commands will be transformed to be interpreted by this plugin to interact with the API of Azure to, in order to create our infrastructure or update it. Okay, so this is the Azure plugin. So it is based on what are the actual configuration you have. If you have more configuration, it will install. And this is the Terraform log.hcl, as you can see. And this file is very important as well. Let me show you here the content of this file. So as you can see, this file has the information about, the current provider. And this is very important because next time you run initialized, it will be, quicker because we already have this file. So this is a state file for your provider. Okay, now let's run Terraform plan. So this configuration file just include what is the provider and just create a resource group. So right now I'm running just like a dry run, which will be like you're asking Terraform to just, like saying, okay, I would like to understand if I run this Terraform, what it will produce. So this is the Terraform plan. It's just a dry run. So once I run that, as you can see, start creating Terraform state, which is a temporary state, and also Terraform state lock info. So this will be temporary files, and when executed the plan, and it will display on the output the result of the plan. And as you can see, once the result of the plan displayed on the command line, the Terraform state and the Terraform log files, they are deleted because, as you can see, we didn't use an output to make a permanent plan on our directory. So this, like, it runs and give the result and delete all the temporary files. So for example, here, if you can see here out, if I put out, this will make the plan permanent. So I can use the plan later. So it will not be just. So if I say Terraform apply, it will run Terraform plan first, which produce the Terraform state and here's the out parameter if you would like to have a permanent plan. Of course, I need to type yes to confirm. Once I did that, this will execute the plan. And once it's completed here, if I refresh that, as you can see, Terraform resource group created. Okay, so this is, as you can see, this is just for creating that. And the Terraform state, this is just, again, to maintain the actual state. So if you open that, it's just a text file. We can open that with any editor. And we can see here, this is the current state of, like, what is the resources that's created, what is the status of these resources, and so on. Yeah, so what are the advantages of infrastructure pattern? So the main idea, again, when we're working with DevOps and, so once you have a code for this infrastructure, it means that I can have accelerating the delivery. I can also measure the quality of the deployment or the delivery by, for example, deployment rate, mean time to repair, mean time to detect. There is many KPIs. I can use them so to measure, the health of that. So, okay, so the second demo. So here, because this will be an end-to-end demo, so I prefer to explain it first. This what will happen in the demo. So first, I will start by run a CI pipeline. I will create first a sample project using Microsoft open source project for demo generator, and then run the CPI. So the CI. So the CI the demo generator will generate a web application. So the CI will compile the web application, which is ASP.NET application. So this will compile the application and create a web package, and also will, prepare the Terraform TF, which is the configuration for my infrastructure as a part of, the next step. So the last step of the CI is to store the package and the Terraform on the Azure Artifactory. Azure Artifacts, so it can be picked up by the CD or continuous delivery pipeline. Once I have that, of course, this is stored on package. I will run the CD, which is continuous deployment or delivery pipeline. So the CD first, it will pick the Terraform file. Before that, it will first create Azure resource group and create a storage account. If you remember, when I created the state file, I mean, when I run Terraform apply and plan and apply this, the state of my environment is stored in a state file. It is, the best practices for storing state file is especially when I'm working with enterprise or with a team, is to store this file, state file, in a shared resource across all teams. So in this case, I will store the state file of Terraform in a storage account. So this is the storage account, as you can see here. So first, I will create the storage account, and I will get, the key of the storage account, so I can use it to store the Terraform state. And then I will get the Terraform configuration file. So this file has all the configuration of my infrastructure. And then, because this pipeline is Azure pipeline, like a hosted agent, which means that this pipeline, it doesn't include Terraform in the first place. So the first step in my pipeline after provision the storage account is to install Terraform on the Azure pipeline. It's the same as I did, if you remember, just like downloading the Terraform exe, making the pass, all of that, it will be automatically happen. So install the Terraform and then run Terraform initialized, if you remember. So by scanning the Terraform configuration, it will understand that this configuration for Azure, so it will install the Terraform provider, which is the plugin for Azure, and then run the Terraform plan, which will execute the Terraform configuration and provide a permanent plan, and then run apply for the plan, which will provision a new environment. This includes Azure Resource Group, and then Azure Service Plan, and the web app that using this service plan. Once I have that, which means that I have now the environment for my application, I will get using the key, and I will store the Terraform state in the storage account, so it can be shared, so anyone can run that later, or even the pipeline. It is not on a machine, in a personal machine. And then, of course, if there is any update, I can just using, like, it's not like here an incremental update, and this is the beautiful, or this is the powerful of Terraform, just incremental execution. Once I have my environment, I can just, or this is the pipeline CD, will pick up the web package and then deploy that web package to the web app. Once I have the web app deployed to my infrastructure or the environment, I can browse to the application and see the web application. So this is the workflow for the demo. Let's look on the demo. Yeah, so as you can see, I will start by going to Azure DevOps Demo Generator, which is an open source to generate a project with source code, dashboard, and many things. So here I will choose the template for Terraform template. So again, you will find that this project requires two extensions, which is Terraform and replacement token. So we will just get it for free. As you can see, it's just very easy. I will install it on Azure DevOps organization that I would like to create my project. And then here install. So let's repeat the step. So here, this is just write Terraform project. As you can see here, all my extension is. So as you can see that this will create the project, and of course I speed up that because this creating the project may take like a few minutes. So if I refresh now, we can see now I have the Terraform project created. So this including the web app project, the Terraform configuration file, everything, And again, you can do that with yourself as well. It's very open. So here I will just navigate to the Terraform branch. So as you can see, I have a directory here called Terraform, and this is the web app Terraform configuration. So this is including the configuration for my environment. So here, this is the storage account that I will use to store the Terraform state file. And here, this is the service plan, and this is the web app or the app service. And of course, this is the storage key, and this will using a replacement token by prefix and suffix at the end with underscore. So this will be replaced in the runtime with the actual value. Let me show you that. So if I go for the TSCI edit and just here, this is the steps. So for example, here to restore the NuGet package, here to build the application, run the unit test, and here to publish the application, which create a web app package, and here just to copy the file, which is the artifact. I just search for, this is the file I want to copy to Azure Artifacts, and here to all content, and here to publish that on the drop directory on Azure Artifacts. So let's queue the build, which is the CI in my case. So again, this will run all the steps that I showed you. So first, it will restore NuGet package for my web application. Of course, check out first, download the application, restore the package, build, compile the application, run all the unit tests, and then package the application into web application, copy Terraform to the artifacts, and also package the artifacts for the web app. As you can see, I can access the artifacts from here, or I can just navigate here to artifacts, which is Azure Artifact. We have here the drop folder, which include the web app package as a zip folder, and also the Terraform file as a configuration. And if you remember, they are ready to be picked up by the continuous deployment pipeline in the next step. And this is, of course, the web app configuration. I can download this file as well. Okay, so let's navigate now to the release pipeline. So here, this is the Terraform CD, continuous deployment. So as you can see, I just have a div, and this is just to communicate with CLI. So here I will just authorize my Azure pipeline to have enough permission to deploy component on my Azure subscription. So just give this authorization. Okay, and as you can see, this is just script to create the storage key. And here, this task to retrieve the storage key, because I wanted to use this storage key later to store the Terraform state file. Here is the replacement token. It will just search for all Terraform file in this directory. And as you can see, it will replace this placeholder with the actual name. Just to remind you, if we open the Terraform configuration file, so for example, as you can see, the storage key here will be replaced by the actual storage keys that I will get it from the run. The app service plan, it will be restored from the variable, like app service plan will be by this name. This is why I had to install the replacement token. And the next step, for example, as you can see, this is to install Terraform on the Azure pipeline. This is to initialize, which again is scanning Terraform configuration, and I need also to give authorization. And here, of course, this is the container Terraform. And this is to run the plan. And as you can see, this is for apply, and I will just using, as you can see, it is with auto approve switch, because if you remember when we run the Terraform, we're just using yes to confirm, but this will be just using. And the last step is to just deploy the web app package to the infrastructure, which will search for the zip file. So just to run the continuous deployment pipeline. So as you can see, this is the environment. I don't have anything. So just here run. So I will use the last build, which we run together. And here, this will be the preview of the running. So as we can see it from outside and from inside. We can see here from outside and here from inside. So as we can see here, this is the steps: creating the storage account, getting the storage key. This is for creating the storage account. It's created. Not yet. So now it's created, and here is the information. Yes, and then here, this is to get the storage key, store that in a variable. If I refresh now, we will see that I have new Azure Resource Group with a storage account. Maybe it's not clear yet, but okay, now it's get the storage key. Now it's, so if I refresh, we have this resource group and this including storage account to hold the storage, the Terraform state file. I have one container called Terraform. And as you can see, I have Terraform state, but it's an empty state because I don't have. So if I open edit, it's an empty. So this is just for apply. We reach this stage. Yes, this is here to deploy the web app. Picking the package and deploy that. Okay, now it's complete. So, and here from outside, let's navigate to my Azure resource, refresh. So as you can see, I have new resource group. It includes the service plan and the app service, which is a web app. And if I navigate here to browse, this will browse for my application, which is deployed on the infrastructure that's created. And if I navigate to the Terraform state file, which is stored on the storage account, open the container Terraform and open the Terraform state, click edit. We can see now I have the latest state of my infrastructure, and it will be updated with any update for my infrastructure. Okay, so that's it.
Hi, Mohamed, there is one question here. Can you use RBAC for storage account access instead of keys? And would the RBAC be for the tech SPN used for deployment?
Let me stop my sharing screen. Can using RBAC what?
Account access instead of keys.
Yes, the main idea, you know, yes, of course you can use RBAC, but the main idea is, you know, using RBAC, it's like you use a service principle. You mean because using RBAC, for example, if it's a personal, you should not use it as a part of the pipeline. You know, the same idea with when you created, for example, service account. You create service account, so you may create the service principle. And this service principle will be only used for, you know, your deployment, and so, you know, it's not for a user RBAC, but it's for a service principle or service account. So yes, definitely you can use that.
Hi, Jane, is there any other questions, so you can unmute and can ask? Hi, Mohamed, I have one question here. How we can convert, suppose if we have any existing ARM templates, so is there any extension to convert into Terraform, or you know, vice versa from Terraform to ARM templates?
Actually, I didn't look at that to confirm converting, but I mean, to just like, I didn't look at how to convert. Even for me, for example, to give you an idea, sometimes even I look about how to convert. I mean, how to even convert an existing Azure resources to an ARM template. Even this is a challenge. I mean, let me give you an example. I went for several projects where they have an Azure environment, but they didn't use ARM template. So, and then when they ask, okay, we would like to reproduce this environment. So even reverse engineering the actual environment as an ARM template, it's a challenge. Because at the end, when you create the environment using the UI and try to reverse that, it is not like structure. It will be all the time it's like spaghetti, and I tried that several times, but it was, I mean, few years ago, but I still, I have this discussion with some other MVPs. I ask them about what do you think, and no one, I mean, has a good solution.
Yeah.
So, and this is just for ARM. So imagine from ARM to Terraform. So I'm not sure, or I don't know, but I'm not sure, or I don't think there will be a good solution here, especially because when you building Terraform, you have a completely different structure. For example, you're building Terraform as a reusable modules, so you build the module. So for example, if you are looking for something, transform ARM to Terraform, maybe you will find something, but this is not the way that you would like to structure your code, because you would like to build like, modules and this module structure. So it is the same, like if you have some code, can this, transform this code to be object oriented, for example, with design? No, you just need to do that manually.
Yeah, actually, because I asked because there was a question from me, I think, before, same as if they have some existing project on it's like ARM templates and they want to migrate to Terraform. So, is there any solution? I heard there might be some extension. There is some extension, but I'm not sure because I haven't used. So that's why I asked, like, if you have used or
I expect that there will be extension to convert, but again, this will be, like from spaghetti to spaghetti, from code to code. Because at the end, when you build Terraform, you would like to structure like for example, even with ARM, you have nested template, you have linked template, which is really more complex. So there is no way to convert normal ARM template to be nested or linked, because this is require like a proper development or design for your infrastructure as code.
Yeah, understand. Okay. There is one more question. Do you have a recommendation for Terraform template scanner for IAC tool security?
For Terraform, no. Actually, I didn't. I mean, I'm pretty sure that most of all the security, vendors, for example, Veracode, Black Duck, Checkmax, or all the security vendors will provide a Terraform. Just because I didn't get any requirement recently that require Terraform security, so I'm not sure. But I think probably most of the vendors for the security platforms and tools will cover that.
You guys, if you have any further question, you can unmute and can ask directly, or yeah. And let me share my screen to show the next.
Hi Radwan, can you suggest if there is any Terraform template for mobile ops?
Mobile logs?
Mobile ops, like we have DevOps, so mobile operations infrastructure, something like that, which we can utilize.
Yes, but I mean, usually, usually you will have the Terraform for provision or update your environment. But in your mobile, I mean, what will be the component of, the mobile will be already the component. So usually you will use Terraform for provisions environment. So in the mobile is already the environment, right?
Right.
And unless, for example, you are deploying to emulator or you create emulator, but even at the end, for example, when you deploy it, I mean to mobile, I mean it's already a mobile, so you don't produce. I'm just thinking of, for example, when you have several, yes, I'm just thinking again. It will be maybe emulator for. Yes, or maybe real device. So you don't have infrastructure actually, because usually the mobile apps will be like an app that accesses the API, right? So will be usually from mobile apps point of view. So it will end up with having the actual mobile for deploying your application, but you don't provision new mobile or you don't update new mobile. I'm just thinking about it, but nothing come to my mind.
Yes.
Right.
Maybe I can also answer this question. Saf, basically, when you are trying to automate your mobile application or deployment, so anyhow, you need to segregate in terms of APIs, backend and front end. Like suppose you are making the React Native app.
Right.
So you have a front end and React Native app, but you are building, communicating with the APIs, right? And you are creating for deploying the APIs in terms of like app services. So those all the infrastructure part can be helped to automate with the Terraform. Okay, but yeah, your code will be deployed as an app as a service. And suppose if you are using any kind of like previously I was working on a project that was more on for RFID scanner. That was so we used to what like anyhow the API, it used to interact with the APIs, and that API we deploy as a service, means like app service on Microsoft Azure. And then we were consuming those app services, and we have means like Windows application built on scanner. So we use that. So something similar, for all the mobile application. So if you are trying to automate your complete infrastructure part, like your app service or your infrastructure part can be done with the Terraform. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But
because
because
it came in my mind because last time I was doing some POC on Terraform using AWS, and I was able to create some groups and these things with the IAC. But I just thought like, okay, maybe there are experts around, so let's ask this question if there is something more which can be done.
yes, I mean, for example, when you have an infrastructure for mobile, like mobile apps on Azure, for example, yes, this could be created with Terraform. But when I'm talking about, I have a mobile app, and I would like to deploy that to the platform. And again, this is a mobile app. It is not the back end of the mobile. I mean, so this will be just deployed to the mobile, and this will be a CI or a CD pipeline, which doesn't have any Terraform. But when you're talking about a mobile app, because you are talking about the back end of the mobile app, this is something completely different, because you provision the back end of the mobile app, which will be maybe a mobile app, for example, I mean Azure app, for example, app services on Azure or maybe AWS. So yes, will be completely, again, it's for me, I will treat it as a some cloud resources. This is why we will talk just the cloud resources, and it will be part of your Terraform configuration.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
No problem.
There is one more question. It's like actually it's asked by Aman Verma. How can I start with Terraform and Ansible and Kubernetes and Docker? So if you have any advice to him, I think it would be great.
I think the main advice for me is learning by doing. For me is, I mean, when I read something, I just forget about it. So, and this is why I create the YouTube, and I think Azure DevOps Labs has many good end-to-end, which is many of that what I'm using. For example, learning Terraform. If you just try to get exactly the demos that I showed you, just to try to, even if you don't know Terraform, but if you take the example as an end-to-end, because you create the project, of course, for example, when you create the project, it just generates the Terraform configuration. But at the end, you will have the project, you will deploy it, and once you complete it, it's working, then you will reverse engineering, like, yes, this is the pipeline, okay, this is the configuration, so reverse engineering the learning, and then you learn that. And then once you can start now reading more about Terraform, if you understand what I mean. So I really like the idea. You start by doing, for example, something like end-to-end, then reverse engineering, and then reading, to get depths. And I have many videos, for example, with Azure DevOps Labs. So I created the video for Terraform, for Ansible, for Docker, for Kubernetes, and it will do the same end to end. You completed, reverse engineer, and going depths.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, man. I have pinged the Mohamed YouTube link and his blog link also. I think there are quite good tutorials available on there, so you can maybe take a look. So if you have any other question, so you can ask, or you can reach out to Mohamed by Twitter or his email also. So thank you, Mohamed. I hope you started going office. It looks like you're in office.
Actually, I just just my manager, she asked me to ask a leadership team to come like one per month. So I'm here. Maybe I have a meeting. And by the way, I'm really happy that you run the session at time, because I was, sometimes in some events they become very late, and it will be very difficult because I have other meetings. But thank you for really good arrangement. I really appreciate it.
Mohamed, yeah, it's really nice to have you. During the session, yeah. Maybe hope we can see you here in Singapore in physical.
I hope that.
Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining the session. We have our next session on July 8th. I have already announced on the meetup.com. So yeah, you can just go and register there. And thanks Mohamed and Maik for today's session. It was really useful for everyone. And if guys, if you have any further question, you can ping us, or maybe you can reach out to the Twitter handle for Mohamed and Maik. Yeah. So thanks for joining today.